In this demo, you will learn to sew the inseam pocket. This demo will be the inseam pocket. Alright, there's 3 pattern pieces that you need for this. Okay, this is template 17. Alright, so you're going to need the inseam pocket, which is you're cutting 2 layers of fabric. You're going to need your front of template 7. Okay, so it's just part of a front. Okay, don't cut a full front, just cut along, just cut around the whole thing. Alright, so you should just have one piece. And you're going to need your back, and do the same thing as you did with your front. Don't cut out 2 backs, or don't cut on fold, just cut around the whole pattern piece, and you'll have one layer for the back as well. Okay, and you'll see I layered or labeled just so it's easier for you guys who are watching this video. I labeled center back, and I also drew lines for a right and wrong side of fabric because I'm using muslin, and it can get confusing when I'm talking about wrong and right side, and everything looks the same. So I thought maybe this would make it a little easier if I just kind of striped my fabric. And the same thing with the pockets. I also striped all of them. Okay. Alright, to the sewing machine. So before we go to the sewing machine, the first thing we want to do is lay out our front and back. Okay, so here's my center front, waist, side seam, center back, waist, side seam, and then I'm going to take my pockets. Okay, so when we think about this, in the end, the pocket is going to be inside the garment like this. Okay, you'll be able to get it right in there. So what we want to do is we want to lay the right side of our pocket against the right side of our center front for one side, and the same on the other. Here's my center back, here's my side seam, right side of my pocket to right side of my back, like this. Okay, so facing up towards us right now is the wrong side of our pocket lining, but also the right side of our skirt front and skirt back. So right sides are together. If we look at these pattern pieces, you'll notice that we have a couple notches here. Alright, it's probably missing a notch. There should be a notch here, a 1/4 inch in from the cut edge, and you'll notice here I drew mine in, and then there's one down here. Okay, because what we're going to do is the first row of stitching we're going to do is stitch these on at a 1/4 inch. So 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch there. So I'm just going to put some pins in to hold them in place. Now we go to the sewing machine. Alright, so let's go ahead and just stitch these on at a 1/4 inch. Now one thing before we do that, remember we need to stay stitch our waistline. So both the skirt front, the skirt back, and the pocket linings have a waistline. So we'll stay stitch those at 1/2 inch, because that's what the seam allowance is. Pocket lining and front skirt. Here's my back pocket, lining and back skirt, then straight stitching down. And then we're just stay stitching these, we're not stitching them together yet. Okay, there we are. So I've just stay stitched all my linings, or sorry, all the waistlines of my pattern pieces. Okay, now you'll notice on your patterns that there's darts and pleats at the waistline. The front had a pleat and the back had a dart. Don't worry about that. We're just, you know how to sew those now. We just want to learn how to sew this pocket. Okay, so I'm going to take my front panel, or my front skirt front, which I have my pocket pinned to, okay, and I'm going to stitch these together on the side seam at 1/4 inch. This is a real seam now, so back tack beginning and end. Here's my back pocket, or back skirt, pocket lining that goes with that, and we'll stitch that together 1/4 inch as well. Back tack beginning and end. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's press those seams open that we just stitched. Alright, 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to press that open. One. That's my front. And now for the second one. Okay. So there's our front and our back. Okay. Front, back. These are pressed open. So now we're going to take our front and we're going to put right sides together with our back. Like so. And we're going to line up our side seams. Okay. And start by putting a pin down here. And then up here as well. Now notice you have 2 notches. Okay, they're your seam allowance notches. 3/4 inch seam allowance. Put a pin in there. Alright, so if you notice now on the skirts, you'll see you have this notch up here, which is telling you that I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the waist, and I have a same one here on the skirt. Okay. Now, if you come down, you'll see this third notch, or the second notch here. Okay, and then we have a large space, and we have another notch. Okay, ignore this one; that's a mistake. All right. So between this notch here and this notch here, that's your pocket opening. All right. So those notches. Okay, if you can see, right here is one, and then here's a second one right here. So that's going to be my pocket opening where your hand can go in. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll stitch, again, we're going to stitch our side seam closed. We'll back tack, stitch down to here, back tack, skip over this area here, and then come back, and we'll start stitching again, back tack, and just stitch all the way down, and back tack. And that will close up our seam, leaving an opening for our hands to go in. Okay. Now, I understand that it can be hard to see the seam here. Okay, so whether you're supposed to stitch because you have your pocket lining in the way. So if you want, okay, you can draw in, measure out, and draw in your stitching line where your pocket lining is. Okay, I'm going to eye it. So let's go back to the sewing machine. Now remember, it's a 3/4 inch seam allowance, but you already took away a 1/4, so you technically only have a 1/2 up here. I'm going to stitch down to this first notch right here. So here I go, back tack. Make sure all your pocket lining is out of the way. You don't want to catch any of that. Coming to that first notch. And there, back tack. Good. Now I can cut my threads. Alright, let's move down that lower notch. Remember, this higher up one is a mistake. So again, 1/2 inch away. Okay. I'm going to back tack here now. And then I'm just going to stitch all the way down. If I did this right, when I get down to here, I should have a 3/4 inch seam allowance. Back tack at the end. Okay. Cut those threads. Now I can close up my pocket bag. Okay. So what do I do now? I'm going to I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch all the way down, come across, and I'm going to stitch right over to that stitching line. So I have a 1/2 inch, and I'll stitch right into here and stop, and I'll back tack there. Okay? So if you need to, feel free to pin around the edges of your pocket lining. Okay? Make sure it's nice and lined up, front and back. You don't need to stitch the top here because that would eventually fold over into the front waistband, and then your waistband would catch that, or a facing, or whatever it is, and it would close it right up. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this at a 1/2 inch all the way around, back tack beginning and end. Okay, when you're a 1/2 inch away from this corner, stop, put your needle down, lift up your foot, turn, put back down, continue stitching. Make sure my seam allowance stays open there. And we're going to stitch right into my seam allowance. And stop, and back tack. Do not go past your seam allowance at all, or you'll be stitching into the skirt, which we don't want. Once that is done, these threads. Once that's done, you're going to now clip right up into this corner, okay? Clip right up to your stitching but not through it, like so. Alright, that allows us now to press this seam allowance open. And now this pocket is going to come towards the front, like this. Let's open that seam allowance first. Like so. So now that seam allowance has been pressed open. Okay. And now you can fold your pocket lining towards your center front, like so, and you can just put a pin in it. Again, if I was sewing a finished garment, I would stay stitch that so it wouldn't be flopping around before I put my waistband or facing on. But now you have sewn your inseam pocket. Okay, there it is on the inside, and that's what it looks like.